Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Anne and today I'm giving you my May wrap up. If you saw the vlog I posted last week, you might know that I thought throughout the month that I wasn't really having a good reading month. But I did end up reading 8 books and more importantly I loved or liked all of them. So that sounds like a pretty great reading month to me, but somehow it didn't feel like that while it was going on. A few notes before we get into the books. I've decided to no longer do the wrap up on the go style thing. I think I only ended up doing it twice this year, even though the idea was to do it every month. But I realized it just doesn't really work for me. I kind of felt a bit of pressure every time I finished a book. It was like, okay, I finished this, so now I need to film this clip, but I don't really feel like it right now because I want to ruminate on the book and really get my thoughts together. And then a few days passed and I kept thinking I still have to film that clip, so it wasn't really fun for me anymore. So I'm just going to do these big wrap-ups just all in one go. A second thing I wanted to mention is that in this video I'm not going to talk about my star ratings. I wrote a blog post a while ago on how I'm thinking about no longer using star ratings for the books I read. I am still using star ratings on Goodreads because I don't want to stop halfway through the year. That just feels a bit off to me, I'm not sure why. But I decided to not talk about my star ratings in this video to just see how it feels and to see if my review is enough. It should be, I think. I just want to give you my thoughts on the books and not really attach a star rating to that. So we'll see how that goes in this video, if I like it, and then I might continue not using star ratings in future wrap-ups, or I'll just use them again. Who knows? Anyway, that's enough rambling. Let's get into the books. The first book I finished was When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. This is an author that I have been wanting to read something from for a very long time. I've seen their books around a lot and they always sounded like books that are right up my alley. Anna Marie McLemore writes young adult magical realism books and I love magical realism. So every time I heard someone talking about this book or one of their other books, I just thought I want to read that, but somehow I never did. So I'm very glad that I have now read one of their books. I ended up really liking it. I was hoping beforehand that it would become a new favorite. It didn't do that exactly. I couldn't connect to it on that level, on a new favorite level, but I did really enjoy it. I find it pretty difficult to summarize the plot or just give you a quick overview or a premise, but let's just say this book is about a boy and a girl, about Miel and Sam. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing Miel's name right. Her name is French for honey, so I decided to just go with the French. But Miel and Sam are best friends. They are as strange as they are inseparable, it says here. And Miel has this special ability. She has roses growing from her wrists, and there's always been this air of mystery around her because she was found when she was 5 years old when the people from the town tore down the old water tower. So it seemed as if she spilled out of that. And the story is about identity, it's about family, it's beautifully written. I thought this was very atmospheric. I think that part was what I liked most about it, the atmospheric writing, the nature descriptions, the descriptions of water and the seasons changing. I really liked that. I liked the relationship between Miel and Sam. That was really wonderful. But there was something about this book that made it a bit difficult for me to fully connect to it. Nonetheless, I think this was a great intro to Anna Marie McLemore's books and I can't wait to read more of their work. The next book I read was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is the book that I read for the Buzzword Reading Challenge in May because the buzzword for May was house. And this was actually the only book on my TBR with the word house in it. I only bought this book in April and I wasn't really planning on reading it this soon because I have to say I wasn't that hyped for it. I love Leigh Bardugo's writing, I love Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows, but there was something about this book that made me think that it wasn't really going to be for me. I had heard that it was very dark and I had heard some mixed reviews of it. Some people seem to absolutely love it, some people seem to not mesh with it at all, and somehow the story didn't really appeal to me, but surprise, surprise, I ended up absolutely loving it. I was hooked from start to finish and I got completely sucked into the story. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that I went in with low expectations, but I adored this and I can't wait for the next book. To tell you quickly what this is about, this story is set in New Haven at Yale University and it follows Alex Stern, who becomes part of one of Yale's secret societies. She is the most unlikely member you can think of for the secret society because she is a high school dropout. She lived a very difficult and hard life before going to Yale, but she was picked to become part of Yale and to become part of the secret society because of a special ability that she has. And the story is basically about the secret societies of Yale. There are quite a few of them, and Alex becomes part of one that is designed to monitor the activities going on with all the other secret societies. And these secret societies all have their own kind of magic, because this is kind of a fantasy story set within the real world, which is always something that I love, so I'm not sure why I thought I wouldn't like this. But it involves a lot of dark stuff, it involves death and ghosts and mysteries that need to be solved. It all starts with a dead body. There are a lot of flashbacks. I really like the structure of how this story is told, and I'm not going to say more than that. What I really loved about this book was the characters. They're all very flawed. They're all not entirely likable, but still I did like them because of how they were written, and they feel like such well-rounded characters. I also ended up really loving the setting of Yale. It made me think of Gilmore Girls. It's much darker than Gilmore Girls, but I really liked reading about all of these secret societies and what they were up to. And I liked imagining these secret societies with these particular types of magic actually existing, but it was a really fun read. There were lots of twists and turns that I really enjoyed, and I was just along for the ride. I wasn't expecting too much, but it was just a great reading experience, and I can't wait to read the second book, even though I have no idea when that's coming out. The next book I read was Under Rose-Tainted Skies by Louise Gornal? I don't know. This is a book that I saw Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe reading in one of her vlogs, and when I heard her talking about it, I was immediately drawn to it. I immediately thought, I need to read that, and then I ordered it pretty much straight away, which is not something that I really do that often. But this is a book about Nora, and Nora deals with agoraphobia and OCD, and she is housebound because of that, because she gets very intense panic attacks when she leaves the house. The reason why I really wanted to read it is because I struggle with anxiety and agoraphobia as well. Not nearly as badly as Nora does. I can leave the house, but I did recognize a lot of the things that Nora talks about in this. And it's an Own Voices novel as well, which was very clear because she just hit all the right notes. She knew exactly what she was talking about. I think it can be really difficult for people who don't know what it's like to understand agoraphobia and understand these types of anxieties. And this author just knew what she was talking about, and that was very clear. And I really loved reading this, even though it was a very difficult read for me as well. And I had to put the book aside a couple of times just because it was getting a bit too intense for me. But what I loved about this, other than the representation, is that Nora is also, she's more than just her illness. She is a well-rounded character. She is very funny. I loved how witty she was, and I loved her relationship with her mother. It was sometimes also quite sad to read about her relationship with her mother because she feels very guilty. She feels like her mother has had to sacrifice too much for her and always has to worry about her. And that's something that really resonated with me as well. I understand that feeling of feeling guilty, even though the thing you're feeling guilty about is something that you really can't do anything about. This also includes a romance between Nora and the boy next door, and I thought that was very sweet. It wasn't particularly special, I think, but I really liked, I'm not even sure, Luke. His name is Luke. I really liked Luke. He was a fun, sweet, romantic interest. And I've read a couple of reviews in which people say that it seems like Luke fixes her, that Luke is the magic fix to Nora's mental illnesses, and I really don't think that's true. I really didn't get that from this story at all. She does start to slowly get better, but that's because of her, because she finds new motivation to get better, because she finds new strengths within herself. And sure, Luke helps and is a bit of a catalyst maybe, and gives her a reason to go out of the house again, but I think it would be doing Nora a disservice to just say that Luke was the reason for all of it. Anyway, I really love this book. If you're looking for a book about agoraphobia or about OCD that is an Own Voices story and is great representation, I'd really recommend picking this up. The next book that I read was an audiobook, and it was Sounds Like Me by Sara Bareilles. Sara Bareilles is a singer. She is quite famous for songs like Love Song and some other songs, Brave, and other things that escape me right now. She also wrote the musical Waitress. I've never really been a big fan of Sara Bareilles, but over the past year I've been listening a lot to her most recent album, Amidst the Chaos, and it's an album that really calms me, which is something that I can always use. I think it's a beautiful album. It has some beautiful songs on it, so when I saw Olivia, again, Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe. She really influenced my reading in May. I saw her reading this book in a reading vlog and she was very enthusiastic about it. She thought it was really good, so then I decided to pick it up as well. It was a short audiobook, which was something that I was in the mood for. And these are essays which Sara Bareilles wrote on growing up, on getting into the music industry, on dealing with insecurities, on lots of different topics. And the audiobook was really delightful because she narrates the book herself. She also sings some of the songs in it, or all of the songs in it, but there are some songs in it, was what I meant to say. The way she narrates it was just a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor in it. The essays are very honest. She's very honest about her experiences, about her insecurities. And I especially like the parts about her getting into the music business and how all that went down. It felt like a very genuine and heartfelt set of essays. She can be quite self-deprecating at times, but it's still full of love, and I really enjoyed that. The next book I read was a reread, and it was Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the first book in the Dreamer trilogy, which is kind of a spin-off or a sequel trilogy to The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. And it's about Ronan, who is one of the main characters of The Raven Cycle as well, and it's all about his ability to dream. And I don't really want to say much more than that, because if you still want to read The Raven Cycle and you don't want to be spoiled for that, I really don't want to accidentally give anything away for that, so that's just all I'm going to say. Like I said, this was a reread for me because I read this at the start of 2020, and just recently the sequel to this, Mr. Impossible, has come out. I'm actually reading that right now and I'm really enjoying it, but I really did need to reread this book to remind me of some of the details because I'd forgotten a lot. I realized when I was reading this, some things that were pretty major plot points I'd just completely forgotten, so I'm glad that I reread this. I did start rereading this as an audiobook, and that has influenced my rereading experience quite a lot actually, because I really didn't like the narrator, and at some point I was just kind of dreading, that's much too strong a word, but that's the only one I can think of right now. I was kind of dreading listening to the audiobook again because I wanted to finish the book, I wanted to reread this, which was one of my favorite books of 2020, but the narrator was just so... I really didn't like him. He has this very low voice, which I thought at first was really fitting for the story, for Ronan as well, but it was also kind of growly and gravelly, and he was kind of sighing too much. It was just awful, especially when he was narrating one of the other main characters, which is a British woman, and this American man really couldn't do that very well. So at about 1/3 into the book I decided to just quit the audiobook and reread the physical book again, and that was a great decision. It did take me some time to find my footing within the story again, but then I just raced through it and I really enjoyed it. There are two things I love most about Maggie Stiefvater's books, and that is the writing, which is very original and very one of a kind. I can't really compare it to any other author's writing. And then there is the originality of the stories. They are so imaginative. They always take turns that I really didn't see coming, and I'm always marveling at how she comes up with these stories, with these concepts. There are always very special concepts within the books that I just absolutely adore, and that's the case with this as well. I did enjoy it a little bit less than I did the previous time I read it. That's partly because of the whole audiobook debacle, but also because I thought it was a bit more messy than I remembered. There are quite a few different characters and there's a lot going on at the same time, and I think this is all kind of meant as setup for the other two books in the trilogy, but because of that, because so many things were happening, it ended up being a bit messy at times, and I think that's also why I forgot so much of it. But I'm really glad that I reread this, and I'm really enjoying reading Mr. Impossible pretty much straight after reading this, so it was definitely a good decision to pick this up again. The next book I read was Dancers on the Shore by William Melvin Kelly, which is a short story collection. If you've been around on my channel for a bit longer, you might remember that A Different Drummer by William Melvin Kelly was my favorite book of 2020, along with one other book. I absolutely adored that one. It was a recommendation from my father, and when he read this one earlier this year and couldn't stop raving about it, just like with A Different Drummer, I figured I need to read this one as well. So I borrowed his copy, and then I loved it so much that I ended up buying my own, along with one more of William Melvin Kelly's books, which I haven't read yet, but which I'm very excited to read. Like I said, this is a short story collection. They're all everyday type of stories about African American families, and they're all quite short stories. And I was just blown away once again by what William Melvin Kelly can do with so few words. His writing is absolutely out of this world. I have never read anything like it. It feels completely effortless, and I'm sure it couldn't have been effortless, but I think the sign of an excellent writer is when it just seems so easy, so effortless. I loved that, and what I also loved is that in just a couple of pages he can write a very well-rounded character. Sure, you don't know everything about these characters because you do only have about 10 pages, but somehow they feel like real people even with the limited information that you do have. The stories are heartfelt, they're genuine, they make me care for these characters. William Melvin Kelly has this absolutely amazing talent of capturing the human condition, putting his finger on the sore spots, and just writing such honest stories that feel very universal. My favorite story in this was a story called Connie. It's about a 19-year-old girl who accidentally falls pregnant, and it's about how she deals with that, how she tells her brother and her parents, and how she tries to make the decision that feels right for her. And I thought it was very special that a man who's writing in the 50s, I think he wrote this book, and who was still in his 20s himself, knew how to write perfectly about a 19-year-old girl accidentally falling pregnant. It didn't feel like it was written by a man. It felt very true, very genuine again, and I was blown away by that. The next book I read was History of Wolves by Emily Fridland. This is one of the books on my list of 10 books I have to read in 2021. And this is a book that my parents gifted to me in 2017 for my birthday, I think. And it was on the long list for the Man Booker Prize in 2017 as well. But somehow I never picked it up. I always kind of forgot about it. It's sat on my shelves for, well, 3.5 years, and I just never really felt compelled to pick it up, so I decided to put it on this list because I did really want to read it at some point, and I'm very glad I did put it on the list because I really enjoyed this. I was very surprised by how much I loved this. What I loved most about this was the setting and the atmosphere. It's kind of similar in that sense, or my thoughts on it are kind of similar to When the Moon Was Ours, because what I loved most about this was the nature descriptions, and again the descriptions of seasons changing. It's very different from When the Moon Was Ours. It's a completely different book, but this is set by a lake in Minnesota, and the main character loves the woods that she lives by, and she loves the lake, so she describes that a lot. And I really loved that. I really loved really getting a sense of what this place was like. And to give you a quick overview, this is a story about Linda, who is a 15-year-old girl. She lives a very isolated life. Her parents pay very little attention to her, and she is a bit of an outcast at school as well. She lives in an ex-commune with her parents, so they live physically very isolated as well by this lake. And then a young family moves in across the lake, a father and mother, and a young boy of about 4 years old, I think. And Linda sees this as an opportunity to finally find a sense of belonging, to find a sense of family, and she becomes kind of part of their family. She inserts herself in their family. But you know from very early on, because this story is told kind of through flashbacks, you know that something is going to go wrong, and it's going to go wrong very badly. I think from the first chapter you know that something is going to happen, because this story is 37-year-old Linda looking back on her time then, on her 15-year-old self. And the structure of this book is something that I very much enjoyed as well, because it's kind of told in short paragraphs, and the structure is very associative. Linda is telling about the main story, about things that happened when she was 15, but then something that she's talking about in this story makes her think of her mother and something about her mother in the past, and then she's telling about that, and it all adds to the story. It's all perfectly crafted, I think. It makes for a very dynamic reading experience, and I really enjoyed that. Also, the fact that you know that something bad is going to happen, and you know what is going to happen, but you don't know yet how it's going to happen, makes for a great deal of suspense within the story. The story isn't anything like a thriller, but the suspense was really there, which I really loved. The one thing that I didn't like about this story, and that made me feel quite iffy actually, is the fact that there is a secondary storyline about a false accusation of sexual abuse. And this hasn't really anything to do with Linda herself, and I didn't always see why it was necessary to the story, but there is this girl in Linda's school who falsely accuses a man of sexually abusing her. That really didn't sit right with me because statistics show that false accusations rarely happen. And these stories of someone falsely accusing someone, it kind of feels like those stories are perpetuating the idea that this is something that happens often. And that's a very serious problem, and I feel like that's something that really needs to change. And then storylines like these, it didn't feel right to me. It wasn't a big part of the story, and I was still able to enjoy the main bulk of the story, but that just didn't sit right with me, and I did want to mention it. And then the last book I read in May was this beautiful graphic novel, Skip by Molly Mendoza. This was a gift from two of my best friends for my birthday, I think in 2020, and I had one day left in the month and I really wanted to read something, so I decided to finally pick this up. It's really beautiful, as you can see. The artwork is absolutely stunning as well. It's just gorgeous and I did enjoy it. I'm just going to show you a couple of pages here because it's just so incredibly beautiful. This is a story about a boy called Bloom who is accidentally flung into another world where he meets a creature, a person called Gloopy, who's a very sweet person. You can see him here. I think he's kind of meant to be made out of grass. And together they go on this journey, on this mission to get back to Bloom's world because Bloom really needs to find his way back. And through that they skip through a lot of different worlds. I did enjoy the story, but I felt like it was kind of underdeveloped. The artwork is absolutely beautiful and I feel like it was really about the artwork. It was about seeing these different worlds, and the story kind of came in second, but because of that I couldn't fully connect to it. I felt like I wanted to know more about these worlds, especially about the world that Bloom is from, because it seems to be a dystopian world. It seems like a lot of bad things have happened there. I wanted to know what had happened there and how it had happened and why this world was the way it was. I also wanted to know more about Gloopy's world, but it all kind of stays on the surface. It's a bit of a surface level story that is meant to show the beautiful artwork in the book. And I think the artwork alone is enough reason to read this book, but I don't think you want to go in for the story because there isn't really much of a story there. And that was it. Those were the 8 books I read in May. I would love to hear from you in the comments if you've read any of these books and if you enjoyed them. Are they still in your TBR? What did you read in May? What's one book that you really enjoyed? I love to chat, so please tell me anything. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me in the future. And have a wonderful day. Bye!